Amaka adjusted her cheap brown wig and took a deep breath before stepping out of the elevator. The moment she entered the office, the usual whispers started. See her shoe again. Is this one office wear? Sandra, her loud colleague, hissed loudly. Amaka ignored her and walked to her desk. Her heart pounded like it always did. She had only been working at Zenko Logistics for 8 months, but it already felt like 8 years. Every day was like a war. The humiliation never stopped. Her boss, Mr. Darpo, barely looked her in the eye. He always praised others during meetings and never let her speak. If she tried to contribute, someone would laugh, or he'd wave her off like a fly. Today was worse. They had a team meeting that morning. Amaka had stayed up all night preparing her ideas for a new delivery system. She had even printed colourful charts. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up and smiled nervously. But before she said a word, Mr. Darpo raised a hand. "Let's skip, Amaka. We're already behind schedule," he said without looking at her. Laughter filled the room. Sandra covered her mouth dramatically. Even Tola, who usually defended her, looked away. Amaka's throat tightened, but she sat down slowly. Her heart broke a little more. Why did they hate her so much? She didn't gossip. She did her work. She greeted everyone. Still, she was the office joke. She looked at her cracked phone screen. Her husband, Emeka, had sent a message that morning. "Have a good day, my queen. Don't let anyone dim your shine." She smiled faintly. If only he knew how bad it really was. But something told her today wouldn't end like the others. By noon, Amaka's head was pounding. She hadn't eaten since the night before, but she didn't feel hungry. She only wanted to disappear. As she walked to the break room, she overheard Sandra giggling with 2 other girls. "I swear, that girl must be cursed. Look at her always struggling. I heard her husband is jobless Seth," Sandra whispered, loud enough for Amaka to hear. They laughed. Amaka paused. Her eyes stung with unshed tears, but she kept walking. She would not give them the satisfaction. She picked a bottle of water from the fridge and sat at the far end of the lunchroom. Just then, a delivery man entered, holding a white box. "Delivery for Amaka," he called. Everyone turned. Amaka looked confused. She hadn't ordered anything. She stood up slowly and took the box. The moment she opened it, her mouth parted in shock. Inside was a small chocolate cake with the words, "To my strong, beautiful wife, you are more than enough. Love, Emeka." Tucked beneath the cake was a note. "I'm proud of you, no matter what. Let them laugh. I'll be seeing you soon." Amaka's hands shook. Her heart fluttered. She didn't know he was planning anything. Her lips stretched into a full smile for the first time that day. The lunchroom went quiet. Everyone stared. Sandra rolled her eyes and scoffed. "A beg, all these poor men pretending to be romantic. Let her enjoy it. He probably borrowed money for that cake," she spat. Amaka closed the box and walked out with her head held high. Her heels clicked confidently on the tiles, and for once, she didn't feel small. What she didn't know was that Emeka had taken the day off, and he was already on his way to her office building, with a mission. Emeka stood in the tall, glass-walled lobby of Zenko Logistics, dressed in a crisp black kaftan. His wristwatch glinted under the chandelier lights, and his calm eyes scanned the room. He wasn't flashy, but his presence was commanding, like someone important yet quiet about it. He looked at the front desk officer and smiled. "Good afternoon. I'm here to see my wife, Amaka Obasi." The receptionist blinked. She knew Amaka. Everyone did. The quiet girl they all mocked. But this man? He didn't look like someone that belonged to her world. Just a moment, sir," she said, quickly picking up the phone to dial upstairs. Meanwhile, upstairs, the atmosphere was tense. Amaka had just returned from lunch, still holding the cake box. Her heart was beating fast, still reading and rereading Emeka's note. Just as she reached her desk, Sandra strolled over with her usual smirk. "So your husband can buy cake, eh? Too bad he can't buy you decent clothes." Amaka ignored her and sat down. A few seconds later, the office phone rang. "Amaka," Tola called out, "reception says someone is here for you." "For me?" she asked, confused. "Yes, your husband, I think," Tola added. Sandra laughed. "Let's see this so-called husband. Maybe he came to borrow money." Amaka stood slowly, smoothing down her old skirt. Her heart thumped with every step as she entered the elevator. When the doors opened on the ground floor, her eyes locked with Emeka's. He looked like a dream. He smiled and stretched his hand toward her. "Hello, my love," he said gently. The receptionist and a few staff nearby stared, mouths open. Amara walked up to him, her voice caught in her throat. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. Emeka leaned in. "I came to give them a show they'll never forget." Then he took her hand and headed straight for the elevator back upstairs. Whatever he had planned, it was going to shake the whole office. When the elevator doors opened on the 5th floor, all heads turned. Amara stepped out first, hand in hand with Emeka. The entire office froze. Sandra's mouth dropped open. Tola gasped softly. Mr. Dapo, who had been laughing with some clients, turned sharply. Everyone looked from Emeka to Amara, then back to Emeka. He was calm. Too calm. His voice was warm but firm. "Good afternoon, everyone," he said, looking around with a charming smile. "I'm Emeka Obasi, Amaka's husband." He squeezed Amaka's hand gently. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I just wanted to see where my wife works and meet the people she talks about every day." Mr. Dapo cleared his throat awkwardly. "Ah, good afternoon, sir. You're welcome." Emeka turned to him. "You must be the manager she's always telling me about." He smiled, then looked at the staff. "I must say, from everything I've heard, this office must be a very interesting place." Nobody said a word. Some people looked down. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sandra tried to force a laugh. "Wow, so you're Amaka's husband? She never posts you. We thought maybe." "Maybe I didn't exist," Emeka interrupted politely. "Or maybe she just protects what she values." Sandra blinked, speechless. Then Emeka pulled out a sleek brown envelope and handed it to Amara. "You forgot this at home," he said, loud enough for all to hear. Amara opened it slowly and gasped. Inside was a printed confirmation. She had been offered a new job, a senior executive role, double her current salary, with immediate effect. The whole office stared. Emeka looked around again. "She starts next week, and I came to make sure she walks out of this office with her head high." Silence, tension, regret. And then Mr. Dapo's phone buzzed. Mr. Dapo's phone rang sharply, breaking the thick silence. He checked the caller ID and quickly picked up. "Yes, sir. Yes, she's here," he said nervously, glancing at Amara. "Yes, I understand. Right away." He ended the call and wiped the sweat forming on his forehead. Everyone stared. He cleared his throat and turned to Amara. "Amara, it seems the CEO of Zenko Holdings would like to speak with you immediately. Please step into my office." Amara blinked. "The CEO?" "Yes." He forced a smile. "It's urgent." Emeka gave her an encouraging nod. Amara followed Mr. Dapo into the office, her heart pounding again, but for a different reason. The moment she stepped in, the CEO's face appeared on the large video screen. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Obasi," the woman said warmly. "I'm F.A. Onuzo, Group CEO of Zenko Holdings. I just received your acceptance for the executive role at our sister company. Congratulations." "Thank you, Ma," Amara replied softly, unsure where the conversation was going. "I also want to apologize," F.A. continued. "I've been following your performance for some months. I know the unfair treatment you've endured here. It ends today." Amara's eyes widened. "I've already sent an email to your manager," the CEO said. "Effective immediately, you're no longer under his supervision. For the next few days before your transfer, you'll report directly to my office." Amara blinked, shocked. "I'll also be sending HR down to investigate the harassment you faced here. And yes, your new salary has been adjusted. You're worth far more than they made you believe." The screen went off. Mr. Dapo couldn't look her in the eye. His hands trembled. Amara stepped out of the office quietly. Everyone stared. She held her head high, looked at Sandra and the rest of the gossiping staff and smiled. Then, to everyone's shock, Emeka walked over to Mr. Dapo's desk and dropped a card. "I own the company she's moving to," he said. "You'll be hearing from us." The room went dead silent. The card Emeka dropped on Mr. Dapo's table sparkled under the office lights, gold lettering, bold print. Emeka Obasi, CEO, Nova Global Ventures. The silence in the room was almost painful. Mouths hung open, fingers froze on keyboards. Even the air conditioner's hum felt louder than usual. Sandra's lips trembled. She reached for her phone under the table and quickly searched the company name. Her eyes widened. "Nova Global Ventures?" she whispered. "He's the CEO? That company is huge. They just acquired a logistics firm last week." Tola leaned closer. "Wait, is that the same company Amara is moving to?" Sandra's face turned red. "Oh my God!" Whispers spread like wildfire across the office floor. "I thought her husband was poor. She said he worked in tech, but she never bragged. She must have known all along. She suffered in silence while we mocked her. Meanwhile, Emeka gently pulled Amaka's chair back and helped her sit. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder. Mr. Dapo cleared his throat again. "Mrs. Obasi, I didn't know you were—" "You didn't need to know," Amaka interrupted, her voice calm but strong. "All I needed was respect. I earned that here. I worked hard, but instead of support, I got mockery." Her words hit like thunder. She turned to Sandra, who was now pretending to type. "You once laughed because I wore the same shoe twice in a week. You didn't know I was paying for my mother's hospital bills." Sandra lowered her head, ashamed. Amaka looked around the room, her voice steady. "I didn't come here to show off. I came here to survive, but now I'm leaving to thrive." Emeka smiled proudly. Before anyone could say another word, the HR team arrived, 4 of them, dressed in suits carrying files. They weren't just there to chat. They came for something serious, and heads were about to roll. The HR team moved swiftly, like they already knew what they came for. Their leader, a tall woman with short braids and sharp eyes, spoke with authority. "We've received a formal complaint and direct instruction from the group CEO," she announced. "We are here to begin an immediate investigation into workplace harassment and professional misconduct." Mr. Dapo's face lost colour. The woman turned to Amaka. "Can we speak in a private room?" Amaka nodded. Emeka walked beside her silently. As soon as they entered the conference room, the HR lead closed the door and faced Amaka with a gentle tone. "You don't need to be afraid. Several of your emails and performance reports were flagged months ago. We've seen everything. What we need now is your voice." Amaka swallowed hard. "I was ignored during meetings, constantly mocked by co-workers, and denied fair treatment. I stayed silent because I thought I had no power." "Not anymore," Emeka said firmly. She looked at him and smiled faintly. Back in the main office, HR had split into teams. They called Sandra first. Her confident strut had turned to a nervous shuffle. She was in the room for barely 10 minutes before she walked out, pale and shaken. Then it was Tola. Then 2 others. Each one came out quieter than the last. When it was Mr. Dapo's turn, he tried to put on a bold face. "This is just a misunderstanding," he said, adjusting his tie. By the time he came out 30 minutes later, he didn't say a word. He simply walked back to his office and shut the door. Later, the HR lead returned to Amaka. "We'll be taking disciplinary action. The full report will be forwarded to top management." Amaka stood slowly. Her legs trembled, but her heart felt light. "Thank you," she whispered. "You earned it," the HR officer replied. Emeka looked at her and smiled. "Ready to go?" Amaka nodded. They walked to her desk together, where she packed her things. The same desk where she had cried silently for months. But as they walked toward the elevator, something happened that she never expected. The entire office stood up and began to clap. The applause was soft at first, just 1 or 2 hesitant claps. Then it grew louder. Clap, clap, clap. People stood up, embarrassed, humbled, yet moved. Even those who had mocked Amaka most joined in. Amaka stopped in the middle of the hallway, stunned. Her eyes widened. For a moment she thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. These were people who had laughed behind her back, rolled their eyes at her ideas, whispered about her clothes, her silence, her so-called broke husband. Now they clapped because they finally saw her for who she truly was, a woman who had survived the fire without burning and came out with gold in her hands. Tola stepped forward, guilt all over her face. "Amaka, I'm sorry," she said softly. "I should have defended you. I knew they were wrong, but I didn't want to be the next target." Amaka looked at her for a long moment. "I understand," she said gently, "but silence can hurt as much as words." Tola nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. Sandra didn't say a word. She just stood by her desk, arms folded, eyes red. Her pride wouldn't let her speak, but her silence this time was not confidence. It was shame. Amaka turned back to Emeka. He reached for her hand and she took it. Together they walked to the elevator. The doors slid open. Amaka turned to face the office one last time. Her voice was calm, steady. "You all thought my silence was weakness, but it was strength. I didn't need to fight with words. I just waited for my time." Then she smiled. "And now it's my time." The elevator doors closed behind them. As they descended, Emeka pulled her close. "You were always meant for more," he whispered. Amaka rested her head on his shoulder, her heart full. She walked into that office every day like a shadow, but she left like a queen.